Master's degrees will be the Dean of Business and the McCullum Graduate School, Dr. Michael J. Page. The names of the candidates will be read by Dr. Catherine Yusoff, Associate Professor and Chair of the Information and Process Management Department, and Dr. Alan Hoffman, Professor of Management and Director of the MBA programme. To expedite these proceedings, please hold your applause until the names of all the candidates have been read. And for everyone's security and comfort, please keep the aisles clear. Thank you.
Master of Science in Accountancy, Jenna Arnold. Angela Bragg, distinction. Damian Brown, distinction. David Castine. Su Ren-shin. Raymond Chan. Beverly Chiarelli. Kita Chikushi. Rudy Cyprian. Amir Darvish. Wen Deng, distinction. Alexander Gorlick, distinction. Kevin Hansberry, high distinction. Richard Heller, distinction. Ki Wang, high distinction. Lu Wang. Jejin. Manesh Lal. Ashley Lawson. Jing Liang, distinction. Kun Liang. Shubin Lang, distinction. Aaron Monahan. Kara Murphy. Elda Musta, high distinction. Daniela Ornos. Stephen Politano. Junju Chen, distinction. Kelly Reardon, distinction. Alexandra Rich, distinction. Christopher Sawin. Michael Shotwell. Fernando Silva, high distinction. Zhaozu Song. Tintin Song. Wei Yan Sun. Stephen Toko. Jeffrey Vanna. Zian Wei, distinction. Eric Wong. Yan Wu, distinction. Wenjun Zhu. Zhao Zhu Zhu. Yu Zhu. Yilin Liao, distinction. Saki Yoshi. Wei Yan, distinction. Jing Zhen, high distinction. Su Zhu. Master of Science in Finance, Reem Al-Swilam, distinction. Anthony Arno, distinction. Marve Basharir. Youssef Benkshakfun. Nathan Budrow. Philip Kai. Eric Carlton. Pearl Eduama, distinction. Bella Chacha. Silvio D. Vincentis. Jinding. Eric M.D., distinction. Yu Ying Feng, distinction. David Gayan, distinction. Mingjing Gao. Oana Georgescu. Christina Gregoire. Rujun Hao. Li He, distinction. Ziri Wang, distinction. Tao Hyun. Khaled Kasem. Runjit Kati. Alper Kirasepi. Kali. David Levine, distinction. Shiyu Lu, distinction. Kevin Mader. Wesley Mock, high distinction. Uchenna Ogbator. Oscar Osden. Halien Pham, distinction. Jennifer Prohaska. Nicholas Rod. Patrick Randall. Fabrizio Riccardi. Hayu Sung. Jin Sung. Penchu So. Anna Sivarov, high distinction. Rong Tung. Ying Tung. Yunli Tu, high distinction. Tanya Tiangsith Tanan. Robert Tufo, distinction. An Vu. Anne Wanioki. Yan Zhu. Sojing Zhao. Mark Yang. Vlad Zaitsev, distinction. Menyong Zhang, high distinction. Master of Science in Financial Planning, Andrika Arnold. Haig Barbarian, distinction. Melissa Broder. Erica Duke, distinction. Nicole Fertita. Timothy Haley, high distinction. Hayad Ismail. Trevor Larkin, distinction. William Lefevre, high distinction. Jill Pizzuto, distinction. Monica Sakos. Jennifer Sarson. Master of Science in Human Factors and Information Design, Vanessa Battaglia, distinction. Kyle Bedell, distinction. Rosemary Broom Bingham, high distinction. David Brown, distinction. Paul Cuccinota, Robin Davis, distinction. Carol DeCourcy, distinction. Stephen Denning, high distinction. Serena Doyle. Michelle Erickson, distinction. Mildred Hartnett, distinction. Sudip Hooray. Joanne Hubbard, high distinction. Martha Cam, distinction. Judith Keeley, high distinction. Echo Kirk. Jennifer Latour. Zalashta Luden, high distinction. Payel Mistry. Lynn Nassman, high distinction. Justin Honorato. Alana Person, distinction. Ria Roy, distinction. Tomer Sharon, high distinction. Caitlin Thompson, distinction. Master of Science in Information Technology, Carrie Buckley. Shinjin Duan. Anuradha Karkanis, high distinction. Mahathi Kolipakam, high distinction. Robert Stubbs, distinction. Kathleen Wilson. Jiping Yu, distinction. Johnny Yu. Master of Science in Marketing Analytics, Nicoletta Bartolomeo. Elizabeth Sisio. Jana Dinsmore. James Lally, high distinction. Annette Leonard, high distinction. Meng Sun, distinction. Anna Tam. Master of Science in Real Estate Management, Thomas Constantikatos. Thomas Murphy, distinction. Charles Surface, high distinction. Master of Science in Taxation, Tiamir Andreev. Melanie Antonelli, distinction. Gregory Arpino. Danielle Boxker. Robert Cesarid, high distinction. Kimmy Chan. Melissa Clark, distinction. Rebecca Crabtree, distinction. Shannon Fezenden, distinction. Kristen Goslin, distinction. Stephen Hutnick, high distinction. Joshua Johnson. William Keene. Wen Lowe. Patricia Mistretta. Carla Musto, distinction. Christine Nemore. Theodore O'Leary. Anissa Owen, distinction. David Piasecki. Tamara Richards. Elena Roberts, high distinction. Lakia Rutherford. Mark Stevens. Wes Siemanek. Sharon Tatro. Aaron Tobin, distinction. Natalie Withers, distinction. Ji Wong, distinction.
Master of Science plus Master of Business Administration Day Program, Manuel Alvarez. Chao Sheng Chen. Gregory DeSista, distinction. Daniel Fitek, high distinction. Corey Medeiros, distinction. Richard Miller. Sunil Munaraju. Master of Science plus Master of Business Administration Day Program, Tamara Rose. Tina Pulka. Day Master of Business Administration, Jindrich Amadas. Scott Canny, distinction. Brian Channon. Jasleen Chawla. Christopher Cheesebro, distinction. Bansuri Datani. Bindi Doshi. Jing Hu. Kunal Isharani. Siddharth Isharani. Daniel G. Mohit Kumar. Chin Lee. Katie Libby, distinction. Ryan Lowe, high distinction. Umang Makaria. Avish Mehta. Benoy Mehta. Sarah Pisha. Rekha Raghavan. Maximino Rivera. Gaurav Sachdeva, distinction. Natalia Shaleva. Michael Thomas. Stephen Wainish.
Thank you very much.
Kristen Wicks, high distinction. Rishad Ajani. Master of Business Administration Evening, Hamad Al-Marzuki, distinction. Miriam Al-Duwasan. Darshana Amin. Lauren Ano. Elizabeth Arena, distinction. Matthew Osman. Jennifer Austin. Jeremy Baudet, distinction. Kriti Bhushan. May Boucherik, high distinction. Ashley Braga. Warren Brown. Phuc Bui. Carlos Buxton, high distinction. Berenger Cases, distinction. Nicholas Castellano. Hang Chang, distinction. Lisa Chang, distinction. Justin Chase, high distinction. Sanchos Choresa. Christine Sipsic, distinction. Scott Colligan, distinction. Sean DeCunha. Adam DeHaven, high distinction. Andrew Dennison. Kristen Desjardins. Melissa Delala. Michael Danahy, high distinction. Danielle Drew. Daniel Dube. Robert Dubman, high distinction. Dan Duffy, distinction. Melanie Dunn, distinction. James Frazier, distinction. Lisa Fritz. Michael Fuller, distinction. Eric Georgette. Nicole Janukas, distinction. Gladys Golda. Anthony Galino. Mohit Gupta. Frederick Harrington. Thomas Hardy. Don Hinchcliffe, distinction. Cluis Howe, high distinction. Jasmine Jimenez, distinction. Marcy Judge, distinction. Thomas Kanyok. Colleen Kern, distinction. Allison Kerr, distinction. Abigail Kilgore, high distinction. Joan King, distinction. Audrey Karasik, distinction. Adam Kroll. Michelle Latari. Philip Law. Robert Leopold, distinction. Darlene Legero. Hing Lin. Ina Lodato. Michelle Marbella. Morris Massery, distinction. Catherine McAlevey. Lauren McCarthy. Josh McDonald, distinction. Heather Mitchell. Steve Morin, high distinction. Evelyn Mortensen. Christopher Mudari. Sheila Muller, distinction. William Neville III. Scott Nolan, distinction. Pamela Notartomaso, distinction. Eric Olson, distinction. Michael Pasquarello, distinction. Prashant Pawar. Richard Person, distinction. Matthew Petties. Michael Pierre. Craig Provencher. Prakash Purohit. Srilatha Rajkumar. Melissa Ray, distinction. Linelia Raposo Reyes. Lauren Renwantz. Kellen Riccatelli, distinction. Daniel Ryan. Olga Salem. Farouk Saribas. Elizabeth Savage, distinction. Michael S. Siegel, high distinction. Kunal Shah. Michael Sheely, distinction. Muna Showman, distinction. Christopher Smith, high distinction. Miloš Stevanovic. Bangjong Song. Wesley Sullivan, distinction. Karen Sudam, distinction. Fred Yeon. George Thomas, high distinction. Valerie Torme. Rosalina Svetkova. Siava Vagodny. Diamanto Vakofotis. Ingrid Wallace. Todd Waxman. Jeffrey Weinfurt. Elizabeth Williams, distinction. Christopher Wood. Megan Warsham, high distinction. Ying Wu. Liang Zhang. Zhongfei Zhu. This concludes the reading of the degrees for the McCallum Graduate School of Business.